We just before we go into kind of the plan for the evening, it'd be great if you could stick, if you haven't done so already, onto mute your microphones, which just saves any sort of random noises popping up whilst the speakers are going to be talking. And then, as you already see with the chat box, we'll use that for any questions that pop into your heads when the speakers are up. Drop them into the chat box. Myself and Oliver will be collating them, and there'll be 2 opportunities where we'll kind of put those questions to our guest speakers. Towards the middle of the event, we'll have a breakout as well, so we'll go into smaller groups, so a bit more sort of networking and a chance to chat more informally in smaller groups. So welcome and thanks for joining us. We'd planned this Future of Work event several months ago, and it was meant to be in Edinburgh, in the room, in person. So it's obviously quite a different event. We are now online, virtual, on Zoom, but silver lining, we now have people joining us from all around the world, which is actually amazing, and actually a much higher capacity in terms of numbers than we would have been able to do if it was in the room. I think as obviously a topic, it is super relevant at the moment. We know over the last 2 months, the way we all work has dramatically changed. And I'm sure we're all still kind of coming to grips and getting to terms with that. So yeah, I think it's a very, very relevant topic, both already was a relevant topic, but even more so, and especially for the future and how do we rebuild post COVID-19. Just in terms of, to see if my slides work, a little bit of who I am. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Helen. I am the director of Not9to5, but I'm also a fellow of the RSA. One of the things that we do is we focus on enabling others to thrive outside of the 9 to 5, with a particular focus on the key skills that are needed within the changing nature of work. We run several events a year with different partners. I've got a couple of them also joining us just to take part this evening, which is great. And they're always on topics such as future of work and kind of relevant skills around that topic and how as we shift and change into the future. It's really brilliant to be collaborating again with the RSA Scotland. This is our 4th event, I think, with them. So really pleased to be kind of with them this evening. In a slightly different format. We have very fortunately this evening have someone joining us who is wonderful, called Jenny Leonard, and she is an artist who will be live scribing the event. So I'm very quickly just going to hand over to Jenny so she can just say a few words about what she's actually doing.
Hello, hello everyone. Thanks, Helen. Hi everyone. Yeah, as most businesses, this is me out in public, usually drawing at conferences on large canvases, but like everyone else, I've now gone virtual, so I now do on paper, just in black and black.
I think we might be losing her. Jenny, are you still there?
I'll be by the end of today, be sharing that with samples. Sorry, could you read that?
We got some of it, so I think just she will be drawing in the corner. And did you want to say anything else, Jenny? We lost you about halfway through. Beauty of tech. Jenny will be there listening to us. Sorry. That's okay, Jen. I'll fill in the gaps. So.
I'll be drawing here.
Jenny will be drawing, and then there'll be an image created basically afterwards on the key themes and topics that come out from our guest speakers. That will be sent in a follow-up email tomorrow, and so you'll all have access to that, which is great, and her work is amazing, and you'll get her full details as part of that follow-up. Just a little reminder before we start, if you haven't done so, can you stick your microphone on mute? I think there's a couple of people who are unmuted currently, and I will just talk you through the agenda. Can everyone see an agenda that says Zoe at the top? Hopefully. With that, we will have Zoe from Future X as our first speaker this evening. Then Tom, then we have Lisa from Flexibility Works. There'll be a Q&A. And then we'll go into a short break where there'll be an opportunity in smaller groups just to network and chat with others. Then we'll come back for the second round of speakers, and that will be Louise from Wellbeing Rebels, Joe from Mindset Experts, and Mandu from the Women's Equality Party. Again, a Q&A, and then Leslie from the RSA Scotland will say a few words, and then for those who are able to stay, there'll be another opportunity for some breakout and networking. So hopefully you'll be able to stay with us till the end, but absolutely fine if you need to dash off a bit earlier. We appreciate you're all very busy. So just in terms of the format, we've done this a couple of times, but it's basically a series of fast-paced talks. It has a technical name, but as we don't have the license for it, we're calling it fast-paced talks. And each speaker has 6 minutes, 40 seconds in total to share their perspective, their view on the future of work. They will have slides changing automatically behind them, and each slide just plays for 20 seconds. So they have 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, 6 minutes 40 in total. And with that, I will be handing over to our first speaker, which is Zoe from Future X.
Thank you so much, Helen. So hello, everyone, and thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be part of today's conversation about the future of work. I am Zoe Cantonato, one of the founders of Future X, a company on a mission to empower the purposeful by giving entrepreneurs the tools they need to build scalable and sustainable companies. So over the past few years, we have seen our world changing and being impacted by many different trends, such as the rise of technology and automation, the impacts of globalization, access to different markets and diverse talents. And based on the trends, the conversation about the future of work was already there. There were so many different scenarios. However, we're currently going through one of the fastest changes we've ever experienced in our lifetime. It might feel sometimes that everything has been put on hold since March. However, the reality is that the world has already changed, and we'll be able to see this impact only when this is over. What we've witnessed, though, is that companies have been trying to adapt to this new way of working by embracing remote working and the use of technology. We've seen people working from home, collaborating online, even socializing online. And I think this is here to stay.
Wow.
We've already seen companies like Facebook and Twitter saying to their employees that they can work remotely on a permanent basis. So I think we'll see spaces like this one, large offices that become redundant in the future. And we also see people less willing to commute for long period of times if they can work from home. However, we're still in a state of uncertainty. No one can say for sure what will happen in the next months or years or even days. But I'm a big believer that crisis can be an opportunity to reflect, to innovate, but more importantly, to fix what is not working. So in this presentation today, I'm focusing on 5 trends that existed before the pandemic, but they have become strongest over the past few months. And I think that can really help us build a more positive future of work for everyone and help with employee happiness and productivity. So the first one is flexible working. We've already seen people embracing this, but I think that will continue. People will demand more flexibility in terms of the hours they work, the location, and we already see examples here in Scotland with a proposal of a 4-day working week for everyone. The second is the conversation about well-being. It has been there for years, but now it's more important than ever. We used to say, "How are you?" to people as a passing comment, but now we mean it and we care about the answer. So we need to bring that energy back into organizations and build cultures that are supportive. Going through this experience makes us realize that life is unpredictable and you need to live it to its fullest. So what we'll see is people want to work more on projects that are really passionate to them and matters to them. So we will see a rise in purpose-driven work and people asking for that. Kindness matters. During this pandemic, we've witnessed that people expect and reward kindness. People were angry with businesses that were not following the rules or risked the safety of their employees. So there will be more demand for good businesses that are accountable for their actions. And finally, the shift in importance of physical locations will also mean that we have a chance to tap into more inclusion and diversity. We will have access to people from different locations and backgrounds, and that will bring into our businesses voices that will bring such a massive positive impact. As I mentioned before, these are 5 trends that existed before, but have been accelerated over the past few months. And I really believe that gives us an opportunity to create a positive working environment that will lead to a more empathetic economy, which can also help us build back better after this situation. However, just knowing them is not enough. We also need to spend time educating ourselves and gaining new skills and tools that will allow us to keep adapting to this new reality and stay relevant. So we'll spend some time now talking about a few of them that I think are a good starting point. So we will need a different kind of leadership to support the new way of working. Human-centered leaders who put people before profit, doing what is right before results, and focus on really empowering and supporting their employees to become the best version of themselves. We will see that the rise in remote working will also mean that people who are not computer literate and they're not comfortable with technology are in danger of being left behind and not have access to the same opportunities. So what we really need to do is to focus our energy and invest in money to bring these people on board and educate them. And as the world is changing, we also need to approach our careers in a different way, in a less rigid way. Industries disappeared in a day and new ones appeared. So we need to nurture a feeling of curiosity and adaptability that will allow people to find new ways to constantly upskill and reskill themselves to stay relevant. And finally, we will also need different communication skills. They were important before, they're even more important now that we're doing everything through a screen. We need to think about remote decision-making that is fair and engaging for everyone, but also conflict resolution to have the difficult conversations through a screen. As businesses and business leaders, we have a unique opportunity to shape a new future of work that is positive. So we need to think about the long term and about what we want to see in the world and what our role is in it, and start working on this right now. But more than everything else, we need to be resilient. Everything I just said before is just a speculation. We still don't know what the directions the world is going to take. And the truth is, we will never know because anything can happen at any point. So I'll leave you with a quote from Darwin who said, "It's not the most intelligent or the strongest species that survive, but the most resilient." Thank you so much for listening.
Amazing. Thanks, Zoe. And we're straight into Tom. Hopefully he is there and ready. Tom, you might be on mute.
Mute.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
You got me now.
I'm gonna mute myself and I'll start again. You can start again.
Okay, firstly, my name's Tom. I'm a life coach. I'm a bushcraft instructor. I want to say a big thank you to Helen for inviting me along. And I'm going to tell you a little story that started in Bulgaria. This is a few years ago. I'm on a ski lift, very much like the picture you can see. And I'm sharing it with 3 people. One of them's the mother of the 2 teenage girls who are sitting in the back. And she's got her phone and she's filming the whole view all the way up. And the girls, well, they're just talking at the tops of their voices. She was like, and I was like, and that is so whatever. And we're passing through this magnificent scenery and they're not seeing any of it at all. Anyway, after a moment, their mum, who's been filming for nearly 5 minutes, takes the phone, clears her throat and hands it to them and says, "Take a look at this." So they do. And they look at the phone and we're still out there in the middle of these magnificent pine trees that we're passing through on the ski lift. And they go, "Oh my God, that's so beautiful." And one of them even scrolls it back to the beginning to watch it again. But we were still actually there in the real place. And I was like really shocked. And I just thought, my God, these kids just don't get it. But I'm thinking now, maybe they were right. Maybe they had a point, because to get the benefit of nature, and I'm going to talk in a bit about how that can actually make us more productive, and that's the really important bit for the future of work. Perhaps they did have something, because for years we've been looking at images of nature, and here's something for you to try at home, folks. Google success and hit images, and you will find 1,000 pictures like this. But if you run your own business, if you're pulling 60 hours a week, success may look a little different to you from the top of a mountain top. It's kind of strange why we associate it with that, but there are reasons. We can exist without nature, and most of us do. You know, some of us are, like I said, spending 60 odd hours a week and more at work, and we're not getting out there at all. But we can be more productive, better, happier, healthier people with just a small amount of outside time. Now, Bear Grylls, I taught this kid everything he knows. No, I didn't. Has promoted a view of the outdoors that it's got to be rough and it's got to be tough. And this puts a lot of people off. It absolutely doesn't have to be that way. To get the most out of it, or to even get something really productive out of it, it can be as little as 20 minutes a day. Now, I speak to a lot of people who talk to me after doing a lot of hours. Some of these people work in Scotland's burgeoning tech industry, that they're running on an adrenaline because they're just basically punching it out. They want to get there. It's really important. This is a bit of an illusion of reality. After a while, running on adrenaline gives the illusion of efficiency. We might feel like we're totally out there because our reactions are still quick, but our decision-making ability drops off drastically after around 50 hours in the week, and we might feel like we're doing great, but we're not actually really at the top of our game. 20 minutes a day spent in the park, and it doesn't have to be the last frontier. You don't have to be on top of a mountain like that picture with your arms up, can significantly reduce the cortisol in your system. You're going to be a lot less stressed out. Similarly, a similar amount of time can actually increase your memory capacity. And I'm showing these pictures of parks for a reason, because you can get this effect just from being there. Glasgow and Edinburgh are well blessed with beautiful city parks. You can make the use of them. Even now, we're going to get more access to them soon. I really hope so. That would be great. It also increases your concentration by up to 20%. That's 20 minutes a day of just being in an area with some natural scenery, some birds, some trees. That could be your city park. 20% increase in concentration, memory, and stress reduction. Now, if this came in a bottle, it would be worth a fortune. So why isn't everyone doing it? Well, the hard bit is, in order to make this work, you've got to actually take this, turn it off, mute it, put it in your pocket and keep it there, because you're going to need to take that time to focus on your surroundings. Now, I know it sounds a little bit wah-wah and out there, but there's a lot of scientific studies go into this. I'm quite happy to share them with Helen. I'm not going to get into them now because we don't have a lot of time. This is Glasgow from Cathkin Braes Forest, a beautiful place on the edge of the city. Just look at that view. That's absolutely magnificent. That's right outside the city. I've been running groups out there for the last 2 years. This is one of them, Coffee in the Forest. We meet up, we light a fire, we hang the kettle over it, and we talk. I'm not doing too much of a plug here because all of these sessions are free. But when you get a group of people in a beautiful spot, natural beauty, sitting around the fire, you'll find it's a very, very different conversation to those same people might have in a room with white walls. We've baked bread on fire. We've done quite a number of different fairly out there things. These sessions only take a couple of hours, but oftentimes people will tell me how they've been able to return to work feeling refreshed, invigorated, and a little bit more on top of their game. Yeah, this was something else we did. We made burning torches and we took a walk through the forest. We could. We'll be back to it again soon, few more weeks at this rate. Now, I'm not claiming responsibility for the way these people felt when they went back out there. It's the place itself that works on them, but it requires some real discipline to make that choice, to go out there, to turn the phone off and to just relax. want to stay productive in a, you know, the sort of work environment, the definitely not 9 to 5 available 24/7 work environment we have now, then this is a massive, really useful, highly productive, free resource. It's right on our doorsteps. You can join the meetup groups. They're all free. I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to leave some links. Love to have you along on the show. We'll be back out there really soon. I think that's me at time up now. So I'm going to say thank you very much for your attention.
Brilliant. Amazing. Thanks, Tom. And yet we have Lisa up next. If you just want to stick yourself back on mute, Tom, in the nicest possible way.
Of course, yeah.
Sorry, Lisa, I carried on sharing whilst talking, so I'm just going to go back to that. And give me 2 seconds, everyone. It's nothing like having a good technical hitch.
That's okay. I'll start off by saying I'm going to be talking about flexible working because I don't see that in my slides, so I've got myself a few extras.
Brilliant. Yeah, I need to just reload the slides. You know, obviously this was all planned. My computer's just having a little, it does not want to stay on that slide. Okay, right, we are there. No, we're not. And sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, Tom, lovely slides. Really, I felt very inspired by that. So thank you. And my job share partner has spoken to you, I know, and we're thinking of doing things together already, Nikki Slowey. So yeah, thank you. It was really good to hear from you again.
Brilliant. And I am almost there, I promise. Might have jumped ahead to your first slide, Lisa, okay?
Okay. Ready for me to go? Okay. So look at my 3 little chickens here. Happy, content, free to run around. Confident, balanced, sharing a purpose. Joyful even. Free-range children, some may say. Chicken are human. When people have control over where, when and how long they work, they're happier, healthier and more productive. The twins as newborns. Yikes. Stressed, tired, anxious, confused, upset, no control. And that was just me. Some people live and work like this, and their life is not so nice. Their hours of work are more fixed, and they end up driving their poor mothers, I mean managers, to despair. Pre-COVID, Monday to Friday 9 to 5 was dying out. 75% of Scots wanted flexible working. Millennials, parents, older workers, people with disabilities, or those looking for a better work-life balance. And 87% of business leaders who offered flex said it improved productivity, engagement, recruitment, and saved money. So demand is high. Why wasn't everyone doing it? Well, it requires a change in mindset shift, a deeply entrenched change in societal norm, and a big culture change. One of the few silver linings of COVID is that the concept that flexible working does not work is being swept away. Recently, I've heard from a housing association that's had Microsoft Teams for years and not used it. Within 2 weeks, it was implemented and the team is adapting well. I've heard from an arts organisation who was cynical about remote working and flexible working and can't believe how efficiently her team is now working across diverse locations. But this is not remote or flexible working as we know it. For those working with children at home, or for those home alone with limited support, know this well. There are lots of additional pressures and anxieties, and we don't want this to put us off a future of successful flexible working. Certainly Direct Line tells us that 15 million people in the UK will want flex post-COVID. So there won't be a business as usual approach, and any return to work will be a hybrid of home and office working, and there will be changes for office, non-office roles too. Greater flexibility, creativity and collaboration is needed, particularly as we experience a blended education model with children both at school and at home. Flexible working, however, works best for your business is needed now. Employers are discovering that prioritising outputs rather than obsessing about hours people work is more effective, and presenteeism should become a thing of the past. We need to be clear about what needs to be done and trust someone to make that happen. So for the short term, there's a few top tips I'd suggest you do right now for a future world of flexible working. Businesses doing this well are putting employee wellbeing at the centre of planning and from the beginning of lockdown have offered support and clear, honest and regular communication. I've heard of a lawyer sending his team a voucher for a meal for them and their families as a thank you for working through difficult times. I've heard about a CEO calling round all his employees to check in, and another sending our colleagues' children a thank you letter for being so understanding, thoughtful, supportive, kind, communicative. But don't just talk to, listen to colleagues and find out how they're feeling and their views on the current remote working situation. What are their personal circumstances that may inform your planning, and what flex might they want in the future? We envisage a very personalised and team approach to successful flexible working. And what have colleagues learned in recent months that can improve your organisation? I spoke with the CEO of a charity which supports children from disadvantaged communities through music, and through COVID they have moved their teaching online, and now for the first time are considering expanding services to children in rural communities. The next thing is to evaluate the impact of the current situation on your business and your people. I would find out where the issues are and work out how to improve them. Then give people a very clear roadmap for flexible working. What might be possible for your business and what will not. Last week, I spoke to a manufacturer who, due to public transport limitations at the moment, has flexed the start and finish times of shifts to enable workers to get to work without the stress of feeling that they are late. And shift patterns have been condensed to 2 per day at times of the day that work best for their people. Simple but effective things. Thinking to the future, I have some advice too. Start work now on the culture you want to have in place long term. This is so important. I agree with what Sir Tom Hunter said last week about the importance of kindness in business. This is a time for collaborating and being more human to enable a safe and successful return to work for everyone. And link flexible working to your business strategy. Flexible working is not a standalone issue. Barclays report that savings made in office space, for example, can be reinvested in employees, and they're thinking creatively about different locations their investment bankers can work from, for example, local branches. Use this time to make flex work for your business. And start enhancing your leadership capability. It's really important that you lead by example and have flexible working champions and share stories about how people balance their work and home lives. I think of a COO I know who makes it really obvious that he's leaving the office. He's very vocal that he's off to spend time with his family. And what policies, plans and support would you need to make your flexible working offering successful? Do you need a remote working checklist, including health and safety and security considerations? Are there some smart working guidelines helpful alongside the more formal flexible working policy, and communicate everything that you have to your teams? Building the capacity of managers is really critical too. They will make or break how things are done. This is a different way of doing things and they may need help. Take managers on that journey with you. Can you offer support to have difficult conversations or look at job design to ensure jobs are the right size? And if you're recruiting, recruit flexibly. This is a hard time, but coming back to chickens for just a moment, this is the time to hatch new approaches and ideas that will enable your organisation to survive and thrive. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Flexibility Works, we can help you to reshape your working culture for the better, and we offer practical help and support on flexible working. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lisa. And thanks for our first round of speakers. I'm sure you can guess by the name of Not9to5, flexibility is very close to our hearts, but I think there were some really brilliant points from all of our first speakers there around collaboration, about kindness, about building a better business for better now that the way we come back. There's an opportunity now just to ask any questions for our first speakers, or we can go straight into sort of smaller groups, which is also a chance to top up and get cups of tea or nip to the toilet before we have our next three speakers. So I'll just see, Oliver, was there any questions that popped up in the chat at all?
So yeah, for Zoe, these are just sort of comments, and what I've done is I've looked at the themes that have come through.
Brilliant.
So one theme that sort of came up was about working from home being a privilege and you know, many people don't have access to, you know, broadband and Wi-Fi, and I suppose that was just a theme for reflection on.
Is there anything you'd add to that, Zoya? Any comments on that?
I definitely agree to that. Like, I've been working in my bedroom for 12 weeks now, so I definitely it's a privilege. It's like is something that a lot of people take for granted. For me, the point is not about working from home; is the flexibility and the remote working. Remote working doesn't always mean working from home. It could mean working from co-working spaces. It just means that, you know, we're not in particular going to be gathered in big offices again. So this is definitely a thing. I feel there's no solution that can apply for everyone. But I feel for me, the main thing is the responsibility of businesses to take care of the people they employ. And I think that's how we can start building back. And I see some comments about, you know, whether it will be reinvested. And I think that is actually true. Like, this is when we start holding businesses accountable of, you know, taking the investment that they make from this new way of living and putting it back into their employees to make sure that everyone will have access to same opportunities to work remotely as everyone else.
Thanks. I can see quite a few questions popping up now as well. So if we've got our other speakers there as well, but a couple of questions around how important it is to, for people to make a good digital first impression, both employers and job seekers. That's from Nick. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that question. Zoe, Lisa, or Tom, if
About making a good first impression. Well, I mean, just from my own personal viewpoint, I would say it's about, at the moment, kind of LinkedIn and socials are becoming the main way to engage with people. So I guess having your LinkedIn profile and all your socials up to date with an up-to-date profile and what you're interested in, what your skills are, but also what you're looking for. And coming back to the flexibility question, it's, you know, it's something that only 1 in 8 jobs in Scotland are advertised as flexible, but over 3/4 of us either do or would like to work flexibly. So it's quite often something that we as individuals looking for a job need to bring up. And so we would encourage people to have those conversations with people if that's of interest to you. And I think it is to a lot of us at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's a couple of other questions. We'll just pull out a couple and then we'll break out, and hopefully people can ask these in a kind of more one-to-one basis as well. But Lindsay's asked how she'd be interested to hear how exactly businesses can be held accountable on this. What mechanisms do we have? I think that's talking around remote working, because it's a follow-on from another comment. So again, over to you guys if anyone wants to say something on that.
I think that it's a really important, there's a few comments here about inequalities and how this, how COVID has impacted women, people on lower incomes, people who don't work in offices negatively. And I think it's something that we need to keep front and foremost in our minds and on the agenda, policy-wise and within our businesses as we go forward. It's absolutely critical that all roles now are valued. I was listening to someone speak the other day, and just the importance of employers communicating the message out that, for example, women or people across the board are not going to be negatively impacted by flexible working. So if you think about who might need flexibility, you know, more, you know, in difficult situations, and so employers making it very clear that no one will be negatively impacted, but it's something that's absolutely critical for all of us to keep in mind and keep pushing on. It's something that we're working on too in terms of the lower income worker piece too.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. Guys, what we'll do now, there will be another opportunity for more questions, and I think if the speakers are still able to stay for a bit longer, they'll be able to join some of the breakout rooms, which means you can obviously have an actual conversation with them. So I'll open up the breakout rooms, and we'll just open them, and they'll be close automatically at 7. We'll come back in them for the next 3 speakers. So you should all, when I press open the room, something will pop up on your screen somewhere in the middle or near the bottom, and you'll just need to click on that to join the room. Like any networking, if the conversation starts to fizzle out and you'd like to move on, you can leave the room. Don't leave the meeting, just leave the room. They are next to each other at the bottom of your screen. Come back to the main room and we can reallocate you to a different room. That's not a problem at all. If you just want to stay in the main room because you're going to make yourself a cuppa and do a couple of bits, that's also fine. If you just sort of turn off your mic while you stay in the main room. So I'll open up those rooms now and we will welcome you all back in 15 minutes. We're straight in to Joe. Hopefully he is unmuted and ready to go. And Lou, if I can ask you to mute.
So this quote has been, it's been around for a little bit, and it's attributed to various sources, but I do really like it in terms of the pace of change will never be this slow again. And this was actually going around before the COVID situation. I think when we look at that pace of change, what's interesting is to think about this almost constant state of flux. And when things are changing, we often look to the entrepreneurial world to create the new solutions. And so we should, because there is a particular mindset there, a particular way of thinking in entrepreneurs that thrives in that chaos and in that flux. They can see the opportunities. There is a slight problem though, because the hero version of the entrepreneur is basically not a great bet. I love Elon Musk. I think he's doing some super cool stuff, and I am glad the guy is around. But if we're looking to create change in a more democratic and sustained way, we have to move away from the hero. Because if you look at the world, there's there's billions of people, there's hundreds of millions of businesses. Can you name your top 50 hero entrepreneurs? I mean, can you even name your top 10? Like, I work in the sector all the time, and you know, I'm struggling once I get past Musk and a few others. And the thing is, I've worked with over 300 entrepreneurs in my career, working as an entrepreneurial coach at all sorts of different levels. And I can tell you from the inside, the cool ideas are there. Like the ideas that can create change, the ideas that will impact people's lives, the ideas that shape the future are there. But the only way it's possible to bring them to life is to look again at how we're creating these teams. And I don't know if it is a British thing or a Scottish thing, this reluctance to go out and build those teams and create deep honesty within that team dynamic, because this is part of the shift that we're going to have to make. When Google did their vast study on what makes a perfect team, one of the things that came back was psychological safety. So psychological safety was this ability to be completely open and honest with each other, to be vulnerable, to be transparent about what is happening in that team and in the relationships. So here's a few things to consider when you are thinking about what's going on in your teams. The first thing that we need to think about and to enhance the teamwork is the clarity. People have to know what's going on, and that can be pretty tricky when we're in a state of flux. And when I see this in high growth entrepreneurial businesses, it's the team have got to check in with the story. Like, what is the narrative, and understand how far into the future before that just doesn't make sense. How far does we go down that line before people are going, I just don't know what the story is anymore? Because then they can't picture themselves in that context. Now, that could be just 30 days, but it's important that it's shared. And another principle is around transparency. Now, this is the true transparency about what is actually going on at the moment, what is happening, what's happening in this team, what's happening for each other, where are we on our journey. Now, part of that is the scoreboard and not fudging it, you know, not feeling that we have to massage a figure. Maybe we've all been there. I'm actually thinking now, have I done that? But massaging a figure or trying to show that we're somewhere that we're not. Understanding where is the team at the moment? Where are we as individuals? And feeling okay about saying that. And then it goes deeper into the true sense of identity. So when you think about those teams in that context and in that flux, identity is going to change a lot. And it's going to change depending on the context. This is not about job descriptions and roles. This is about who actually are you in that present moment. And it is important to note that identity is created both from how you see yourself and from how others see you. It's a bit of a myth to just go, it doesn't matter what other people think, because it does, because it shapes the interactions that you're going to have. It'll shape the reflections that you have with yourself as well. So this depth of honesty and connection in the team is going to drive your own sense of identity. And we've got to do something about the power dynamics, man. Like the power dynamics are messed up in teams at times. You know, you're left wondering, can I challenge that person? There's going to be a repercussion if I do that. What's my place in this? If you can surface all of this, then we can deal with this ever-changing situation. There's an author, Kim Scott, who talks about radical candor. And the upshot of that really is you can say whatever you like if your motive is true. If you care personally about the person that you're talking to, if you're saying these things for the right reasons, you can ask for permission to be clumsy in your language because the motivation is there. I would say that it's important to note that this sort of depth of changing dynamics in teams is not about a one-day intervention. You're not going to be able to go to a session or a workshop and then everybody's magically going to be changed because there's just too much going on. This is about fundamentally making a commitment in the team to redefine what is going on, to redefine those dynamics, to enable that team to bring their best self and to say when they're maybe not at their best self, to say when they're struggling with something, to say when they can help somebody else, not to fear any challenge. Because we've got to dream about what the future is going to be. But in order to create that, you have to face reality as it is, not as it was or how you wish it to be. And the only way we can do that is with this deeper level of honesty. If we have that clarity, that transparency, we share our identity in that moment, everybody knows what's going on. But the beautiful thing in all of this for me is really this is about human connection. This is just about stripping away all of the rubbish, you know, all of the stuff, the shields we have to put up, and actually just connecting with each other as human beings and saying this is what we're here to do and it's exciting and we're going to give it our best shot. Because all the great changes that have happened in the world happen because of groups of people. Sometimes individuals lead, but it's groups of people that make the change. And I think that's what we need in the future world of work, just that deeper connection in our teams.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joe. And we are on to our last speaker, which is Mandu. Is she unmuted?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and over
Great. Okay, I'm going to get stuck in. I'm the leader of the Women's Equality Party, and I'm here to talk about the future of work through the lenses of gender and economics. The economy has never worked for women because it privileges the work that men have historically done. We measure the economic success of the country primarily based on GDP, without counting the value of unpaid work, notably domestic work and care work. Before COVID struck, women already did the lioness's share of this kind of work. And globally, women do 75% of the unpaid care work. That's just a fact. And in the UK, that contributes £77 billion to the economy annually. This leads to an employment gap between working mothers and working fathers of almost 18 percentage points. And in the UK, that manifests in a stubborn gender pay gap, which is also around 18%. So what we have is a circular problem. In heterosexual couples, men usually earn more. So what tends to happen is that women drop out of the workforce to become the primary carers of children. And in the UK, we have amongst the most expensive childcare in the whole world, certainly in Europe, which means paying for childcare can be more expensive than staying out of the workforce. Now, of course, the increase in female entrepreneurs, or mumpreneurs, as they're sometimes called, is something to celebrate. Since 2008, the economic downturn then, nearly 60% of newly self-employed people were women. But the gender pay gap in that sector is even more stark. It runs at 41%. Before the pandemic, women were already mentally and physically exhausted, trying to have it all, juggle work and family. And today, just today, data from the Institute of Fiscal Studies has shown that mothers are picking up the lioness's share of domestic chores. Then COVID comes along, and far from being the great leveler, as some people have called it, it's been the great revealer or the great aggravator, exposing and exacerbating deeply entrenched inequalities and shining a spotlight on the underappreciated and undervalued work that is vital to maintain a healthy society. Here's a picture of the PM clapping for the cameras on a Thursday evening. I'm going to put my cards on the table and say that I hope this action to appreciate and give gratitude to NHS care workers marks a shift in public and political consciousness to lead us to the radical transformation of work and our economy. The NHS is made up of 77% women. 83% of the social care workforce are women. disproportionately BAME women. Of the 1 million workers most at risk of catching the virus, but also on poverty wages, 98% are women. And that's why we've been marching. That's why we've been trying to draw attention to that. But let's take a step back and let's have another look at the Treasury's response to this crisis. When the furlough scheme was announced, it had big holes in it where support for self-employed workers should be. It left parents wondering how on earth they were supposed to juggle homeschooling and working full-time hours. Childcare was an afterthought at best, completely overlooked at worst. Women coming to the end of their maternity leave were expected to return to work with no formal or informal childcare. Women with gaps because they took maternity leave were penalized under the Treasury scheme for self-employed people because of the way it was calculated. This image, the one on the left, this is taken, it's a still from an actual government infomercial during the crisis. Well, I think we need to stay alert right now to the unrealistic and frankly damaging expectations being peddled by the government of what it means to work from home and what it means to sort of do the right thing. For a lot of women, flexible working by default has come as a bit of a poison chalice in this context. Anyway, we're heading for a recession of colossal magnitude. It's terrifying. All these sectors, hospitality, retail, the events industries, guess what? They overwhelmingly employ women, often in precarious contracts. But this is a once in an epoch opportunity to rethink how we structure our economy and measure its success. We have to build back better and apply a gender lens to that endeavor. We must move away from the blunt instrument of GDP and find ways to count and value the work that women, frankly, disproportionately do. The good news is we have the templates for well-being and feminist economics, and they're being used in New Zealand, in Iceland, in Scotland, and in Finland. All countries led by women, incidentally. Now, for me, feminism is fundamentally about freedom, fairness, and everyone fulfilling their potential. I challenge you to come up with a coherent sentence that has more F words in it than that. Imagine if we laid the foundations now for an economic recovery that not only propels us towards equality, inclusion, and justice, but also greater resilience, greater creativity, greater unlocked potential. That is not beyond the wit of man, and it's certainly not beyond the wit of women to make it happen. Instead of letting a quarter of childcare providers collapse, as they are set to do, given the COVID crisis, the government should bail them out, like they did with banks and the aviation industry, and bring them into state stewardship. That would be the first step towards free universal childcare. And imagine the parity of esteem with schools, how transformational that would be to our economy. The same with the care industry. It would have enormous quick win benefits for millions of women up and down the country. Economists have shown that 2% of GDP invested in care creates twice as many jobs than invested in construction. We can build towards the world we want to see, where work and economy and the economy work for all of us, where dads get to spend quality time with their children, mums have fulfilling and meaningful work without burning out, where sectors that overwhelmingly employ women are appreciated and not caught up in an ever descending spiral of devaluation. We're only a couple of months in, and I think it's fair to say that we're still in the prologue stage of this crisis. We have to ask ourselves now, what do we want the epilogue to be? And if we want the future of work to be an economy that works for everyone, that can only be led via achieved via a care-led recovery. So join me and the men and women of our movement as we build back better and make the change that we have the opportunity once in 100 years to pursue. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mandy. That was brilliant. We are back into an opportunity for Q&A, and actually, because we have slightly less people with us now, I think just unmute if you have any questions that you want to ask any of our speakers, and throw the question out there. Saves me having to try and figure out who's asking what in the chat box as well. So if anyone has any questions, unmute and fire away. And if you don't, that's also okay. So what, doing my groups this much time?
No, getting there.
Yay, Claire, go for it. So.
Sorry, I was like, I hate an awkward silence. I have to ask a question.
I mean, you don't have to ask a question, but brilliant.
Oh, no, I do. It's a compulsion.
Okay. Go for it, Claire. What is your question?
I'll go with a question from Mandu about that parity of esteem and what we can do for kids from a young age to build towards that.
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me? Yes, I'm on mute. I mean, the parity of esteem really is, from where I'm sitting, a really important economic argument. And I think we've got to make that economic argument from the point of view of, if you really want to crank the economy back up, you've got to enable the majority of the workforce to participate in that productive paid labor. And if you have a situation where you allow big, and I don't mean to be rude, but big fat cat childcare providers who actually receive public subsidy, but a lot of their money ends up going offshore, if you allow that to prevail, to the point where it's too expensive for parents to, if they want to, put their kids into childcare, then you're actually doing a disservice to the idea of recovery from this crisis. And so for me, it's less about, it's one of those situations where I like to make the arguments for why it's good for kids and good for families, but with in the UK, a Conservative government, and I know that the situation in Scotland is obviously different, but where you have a stubborn Tory majority, the way you have to approach it is speaking their language. And so for me, the opportunity now is to just seize on economic arguments that have typically been used against us, have typically been used to explain why they can't and don't have to support public services, to say, this is your way and your route to salvation for all of us. And so I probably wouldn't lead, depending on who I'm talking to, with the feminist bit. I'd let that follow, but start with the economics just to get my foot in the door and begin those conversations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have we any more questions? If not, I'm going to hand over to Leslie, who's going to say a few words from the RSA, just a little bit about the RSA.
I will, and I will make it brief. But first of all, I mean, that really was a barnstorming load of presentations from everybody. And I think sometimes the reason why people don't ask questions right away is everyone's still processing what's going on. And I'm about to say, when we began and Zoe said, these ideas are not new. They've actually been around for quite a long time. But they have fallen, like seeds fall on different ground, and people then see them in a different way because of where we are. And I think that's what's happening. I grew up in a period when, the white heat of 70s feminism and, talking about everything's a gender issue. Everything is still a gender issue. And mental health, the way that things have changed and the way that the future of work, way back in the 70s, people were talking about wellbeing economy. They maybe didn't label it that way, but they certainly were talking about it. And they were talking about alternatives to GDP. And the really big question is, well, how do we make that happen? Well, the RSA is a 30,000 strong organisation which is committed to social change and lived through many periods of change. It was born in the Enlightenment, when of course many new ideas took root. And the Enlightenment is still an instrumental and interesting period to look at, because that's exactly what happened. We had a major paradigm shift where everything changed. The way people thought changed. Nobody can really explain now, looking back, well, why did that all happen in that way? Nobody created a vision or a strategy for it to happen. But a lot of people in a lot of different places were having different conversations, and eventually there was a change. So a lot of people are now thinking maybe this is the period where a lot of different conversations are happening in a lot of different places, and things will change out of it. Change in a more fundamental way than they have up till now. And the RSA is a vehicle for that to happen, simply because of its diversity, because fellows come from so many different backgrounds. In Scotland, we have about 5,000 members, and most of the fellows actually are in the UK, although it's an international network. And the way it works is that when you join, you can find a platform to amplify your passion. You can work through on on a personal level or through your organization or through your work. You can link with other people who share your passion. You can amplify, I would say, amplifying the passion. We're absolutely delighted, of course, to be partnering again with Not9to5, because Not9to5 is interested in how things could be done differently. So, and also it links really well with Future of Work, because the Future of Work is a programme of work that the RSA has been undertaking. If you Google RSA Future of Work, you'll see the scenarios that the RSA have been working on in this. I have to say 3 of those scenarios are not very pretty ones. You know, there's one around big tech future. There's one around horrible economic instability, low pay kind of future. There could be a future around precision economy, surveillance capitalism, and there could be the kind of future that we've been talking about tonight, an empathetic, about kindness, about how technology becomes our servant, and not the other way around, about emotions, about better managed transitions, all sorts of things. And of course, all of these are just scenarios, but they're an interest, they're a way of looking at how change can happen and how no scenario is only good or bad. So it's a way of certainly thinking about these issues. And, you know, I hope that we can do more Future of Work events to talk about this some more. And the RSA certainly, despite COVID, because the RSA was already doing lots of Zoom events and we're a little bit ahead of the curve here, so there was a seamless transition into the online life for many of the events, and the RSA already were doing international events online, so it's been easy for us, and we're delighted to be partnering with this one tonight. So thank you for coming together with us, Helen, and putting together all of the arrangements so seamlessly and professionally as always. And anyone who wants to know more, please contact me or Helen. There's a number of fellows here tonight, of course. We're happy to help and explain more about what it's all about. But have a look online. There's always events going on. Because of COVID, we're probably going to be carrying on with events into the summer as well this year. So, and if anyone is interested in hosting an event or being involved in an event, you don't have to be a fellow. Let us know and we'll try and make it happen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Helen.